So, good afternoon. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm very pleased and honored to be with you today. This is the first time that I've spoken before a district other than mine. But I have met some of your seniors, and some, like PDG Mike Lirio and PDG Nelson Nutrontian, have been longtime friends and dinner guests of my family, sometimes driving all the way to Manila to be with us. So, first of all, I'd like to congratulate and thank you for stepping up to the challenge to head or be part of the service projects team. Service is at the heart of a Rotary Club, and among the top two reasons why members join Rotary and why they stay. So you are in a unique position to impact someone's life internally within your club and externally. So let's start with the learning objectives today. First, by the end of this session, you should have a better understanding of RI President Shekhar Mehta's Rotary Days of Service and how it fits in with the RI strategic priorities. And finally, some best practices in community service projects. So let's just step back a minute. So in 2015, 1 million people from 15 countries were asked, do you know Rotary? And 3 out of 4 actually did. So we have great name recognition. But 35% felt that it was not for them. And 75% did not know anyone in Rotary. Only 25% did. So based on this survey and much more planning and vision and missioning, the new vision statement was approved for release in 2017. And it says, together we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe in our communities and in ourselves. So notice all those words in capital letters. Together, people, create, and change. So how befitting that the presidential theme for next Rotary year, which is your year, is we serve to change lives. So let's move to the next slide. So just like any organization, fulfilling a vision requires strategies and a game plan. So this is RI's action plan. Increase impact. We need to expand our reach. We need to enhance participant engagement and increase our ability to adapt. So those are the action plans at the RI level. But let us see what we can do at the club level and ultimately how it all ties in to the Rotary Days of Service. So RI provides ideas on what clubs can do to increase impact. So first, let's look at this. We need to strategize for impactful projects. We need to think ahead, and we need to do a needs assessment in order to have the metrics. Well, first we need to understand what the needs are, and also because we need to have metrics, we need to have measures for success so that we can tell better and more convincing, compelling stories about the good that we do. We need to also be more focused, and perhaps less is more. Let's also take a look at what clubs can do to expand reach. We need to collaborate to introduce more people to Rotary. We also need to make our club more attractive to others. As PDG Oyan said in a briefing on membership that I heard recently, is that he said, sulit ka ba? Rotary is a volunteer organization, and yet we have to pay to be a member. We pay our dues. So the question is, sulit ba tayo? I mean, why will a member want to join our club, right? So what's your value proposition? And I've always felt that it's important that you view our members as customers. You need to really understand what they need, and you need to satisfy them. Otherwise, they'll leave you, right? So thirdly is that we need to tell our story. I will be like a broken record this whole afternoon, asking you to do the same thing all the time, to tell a story and do it the right way. So with its backgrounder, let's see Meta's Rotary Days of Service. And there are actually 10 elements to this plan. First is that he wants us to conduct a needs assessment. We just discussed that. Second is that he wants us to schedule this Rotary Day of Service at a Rotary themed month. Third is that he wants us to partner with different people. So first is that partner with the Rotary Community Corps. Number 4, he wants us to partner with another Rotary Club. Number 5, he wants us to partner with a Rotary Club or Interact Club. And 6 is to partner with a local or a foreign match club. And 7, partner with another Rotary organization or LGU. And Eight is that 25% of the attendees are non-Rotarians, must be non-Rotarians. So it's very evident that he feels that the best way to promote what Rotary does is to have this day of celebration of doing a service and having all of our partners there. And there's a multiplier effect, right? All of these people will tell others about the good things that Rotary does. So that's what the whole thing basically is all about. And the number nine, the ninth element here is what it is. It's basically to tell the story, post it in your website, and finally is to report it in the Rotary Showcase. Why? Because Rotary Showcase is the means where Rotary in the world collates all the information around the world about the data of our projects. So if you don't report your project, then how can Rotary measure all the good things that we do? So at this stage, let's do a poll on Zoom. There will be a pop-up box in front of you. And so now let's relate the different components to the RI action plan, and you will see a very strong correlation here in terms of what we are to do under the Rotary Days of Service and how that relates to the goal of increasing impact. And the same thing goes with respect to the strategy of expanding reach. So let's now move on to some best practices. So your main task as a service project head or a committee member is to plan, implement, and evaluate projects. And I would add these two pink boxes at the end, which is reporting and telling a story, two functions that sometimes gets left behind. So plan well and plan early for your projects. Don't wait for July 1. You need to do both an external and an internal assessment. Externally, I would say this. Ask first what your community needs, then ask what you can do for your community. More often than not, all of us, we do it the reverse, right? We always start with, okay, this is what my club can do. Then now you go out to community and say, okay, this is what we can do for you. So let's just do it the right way and ask first what the community needs. So aside from the external assessment, you also need to do an internal assessment to think about what your budget is and whether this is a project that your club would like to do. Will this engage more members or not? And how many actually do service in your club? So you can also collaborate with other clubs, but you have to do it very purposefully, and do it the right way. Personally, I discourage projects with a common pot, such as what is described here on the left side, wherein clubs will just tie up together and pay into a common pot, and then pretty much just show up on that day, and then that's it. No, I prefer joint projects where we can coordinate centrally, but do our own projects in our own chosen area. And the reason for this is that you can engage more members this way and involve them rather than having a common pot where pretty much most of your contribution is really just putting in money. The next slide here is what I call an all-in-one day. So I ask you, is it better to do 7 AOFs in one day, maybe once or twice a year? Or is it better to do fewer AOFs, but several times a year? So I'll leave that with you to think about. I just think that, when we plan these kinds of projects, we just have to make sure that we have enough time to spend with the beneficiaries, talking to them and getting to understand really what they need and things like that. Though. So I'd like to share with you this video. As incoming DCC for community service, 18 months ago, Governor Chacha, my governor now, asked me to arrange immersion projects for our PEs as part of their PPETs. And these were the projects that we chose for the PEs to immerse in. So let's watch this video.
Come stop your crying, it'll be alright. Just take my hand, hold it tight. I will protect you from all around you. I will be here, don't you cry. For one so small, you seem so strong. My arms will hold hold you, keep you safe and warm. This bond between us can't be broken. I will be here, don't you cry, 'cause you'll be in my heart, 'cause you'll be in my heart from this day on, now and forevermore. 'Cause you'll be in my heart, no matter what they say. You'll be here in my heart always. Why can't they understand the way we feel? They just don't trust what they can't explain. I know we're different, but deep inside us, we're not that different at all. And you'll be in my heart. Yes, you'll be in my heart from this day on, now and forevermore. Don't listen to them, 'cause what do they know? We need each other to have to hold. They'll see in time, I know. When destiny calls you, you must be strong. I may not be with you, but you gotta hold on. They'll see in time, I know. We'll show them together, 'cause you'll be in my heart. Yes, you'll be in my heart. Yes, you'll be in my heart. I'll be with you from this day on, now and forevermore. You'll be in my heart. Yes, you'll be in my heart. From this here in my heart always. Always. I'll be with you. I'll be there for you always. Always and always. Just look over your shoulder. Just look over your shoulder.
So finally, we need to tell the story the right way. So I cannot emphasize this enough until I'm a broken record. So the People of Action guidelines is not just about using the right logo or using the brand center. It is also about using the right photo and telling the right story. So in the next few slides are some examples of what my club has done and how we told our story. Hopefully you can get some tips and replicate this in your club. So next time you do a project and post it in social media, always think about these 5 questions that are listed here in the blue box. First is, who's your audience? What was your objective? What was the problem that you were able to resolve? What did your club do? What was your impact? And what is the call to action? By the way, in the next few slides, before you think that we have a millennial in my club that did all these, you couldn't be more wrong. This person that did this is actually 60 years old, and she doesn't even live in the Philippines. She actually lives in LA, and she is actually our public image head. There are now so many apps out there, so kayang-kaya yan. You can all do the same thing, just Canva and other stuff. So let's look at this first example. This is what we did just before our club's 4th birthday. And you can see here that this way of presenting data or information via an infographic makes it so much easier for people to appreciate what you've done. Certainly much more than reading a 5-page memo, right? Isn't it easier to just look at these infographics? And it clearly says all the things that we've done and the quantities and things like that. The next slide here, this is my favorite photo that we just actually posted a week ago. So let me read the post that we made. So here, this is our Facebook post. 2 weeks ago, we received a message from UPPGH Department of OB-GYN. Then this is the message. Our medical residents are now getting sick. 10 residents and 4 fellows. They're scared to go on duty. A few have resigned and some may have mental wellness challenges. So we need PAPRs, PAPRs to protect them while they're on duty so they can have peace of mind. We need 24 full sets that our 68 residents can share. Powered air purifying respirators, that is what you call PAPR, are battery operated devices that continuously filter the air, lightweight and comfortable, and perfect for medical frontliners. So that is what they're wearing in this picture. So within a couple of days of that post, 12 club members immediately donated money to buy a PAPR. So we were able to donate 12 PAPRs. So thank you for helping our UPPGH residents feel safe again while at work. So that was our post, and it got so many likes. No? And here's another slide that we have here. This is our last slide I want to show you. This is our slide from Ronald McDonald's Charities. So they found us on Facebook because of our public image efforts. They found us, and out of the blue, they just contacted us and said, we've got 5,000 toys to donate to you. Can you please take charge of distributing it? We didn't really know to whom to give it to, but with connections and our social and business network, we were able to find institutions that could take this and help us in distributing these 5,000 toys. So I just want to end this portion with a quote. Not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love. And it's not much about how much you do, but how much love you put into what you do that counts. That's from Mother Teresa. So right now, let's take some questions. Thank you. Let's start off with the basic education and literacy outstanding projects. So I'm going to be sharing projects with you, but I hope that in the process you can share projects with me as well. I think we can both learn from each other. In fact, when I do these kinds of talks, I really look at it as a learning experience for myself as well. When I prepare these slides, I also do a lot of research, so I learn a few things. And when I present, I also learn from you. So I look forward to having that sharing of information. So before we go further, I think it's important for us to have a common understanding of how things are in the education industry or the education sector, especially now that students are not allowed to go to school, no face-to-face, no? So basically, even before the pandemic, the systemic problem in the education sector is basically the lack of early numeracy and reading skills, no? As you know, learning is cumulative. So if you don't learn your math or your reading on grade 1, it's very going to be very difficult for you to learn it when you're grade 3 or grade 4. And that's basically what's happening now in the Philippines, because it's grade 3 is when they shift, I think, to English. So if you don't learn also your English on your first year, then how can you deal with the math when you're grade 3 and grade 4? So that was quite evident when there was this worldwide ranking or worldwide test, no, or assessment. And out of the 77 countries that were assessed, the Philippines actually ranked 76, no. So we ranked much lower than countries like Malaysia, Brunei, even Albania, Mexico, um, even Bosnia, even North Macedonia, and even Georgia. So countries like that, no? So this is exacerbated when the pandemic hit, because then there was no face-to-face. And so everybody was sort of like confused as to how are we now going to school the kids, right? So this slide basically summarizes the gamut of different options depending on what gadgets the kids had at home. So of course, the extreme end, you've got the homeschooling, and the other extreme end is completely distance learning online, or completely online. And then in the middle, you've got things like printed modules, which is also a form of distance learning, where a lot of these lesson plans are actually printed, and so I don't know how many trees they destroyed in the process of doing that, but that's the majority of the students in the Philippines are actually learning through printed modules. So they actually have to go to school, like maybe once a week or every 2 weeks to actually pick up all these printed modules. No? The rest are actually combination of blended and distance learning. DepEd did a survey in terms of what learners the kinds of gadgets that learners had. So when they enrolled, they actually indicated already as to whether they have to learn through radio or a blended modality or printed modules. So not surprisingly, the highest usage was basically for printed modules, almost 9 million Filipino students. Our district held a town hall sometime October last year, just right before classes started. If you recall, all face-to-face was canceled and school resumed only in October. So this slide basically summarizes the top feelings of the 250 or so attendees of our town hall, and it ranged from difficult, challenging, and there's a lot of apprehension and also concerns about the technology. So this is what basically the input that we gave that we got from these 250 attendees, and based on that, there were several options that were discussed, and some of them will be taken up today. So one of them was intervention by Knowledge Channel Foundation, and just in the interest of disclosure, I am on the board of Knowledge Channel Foundation, and actually the founder of Knowledge Channel is actually a member of our club, and she's actually our PE, Rina Lopez. So for the last 15 years, they've actually done a lot of teacher training and focusing primarily on new pedagogies or new ways of teaching. But obviously things changed with the pandemic, and so they themselves had to pivot and change the modalities and the kinds of teacher training that they were conducting. So what we did was to address the concerns of these schools, is that we partnered with Knowledge Channel to provide teacher training, which would be under the new normal. So everything had to be online. So they had to also pivot the kinds of ways of teaching. And they also thought of new things for the teachers to focus on. Like for instance, how they use Google Meet, what kind of other apps can you use to make it interesting for the students, to interact with, notwithstanding that everything is online. So those are the kinds of things that they learned. No? So in our district, 6 district grants were availed of this Rotary year, all in connection with this teacher training. But each of us had our respective schools. So for instance, there were 2 schools in Pangasinan, there were 5 in Parañaque, 1 in Las Piñas, and 1 in Makati. So we had 7 district grants, so they had 7 clubs, and 6 clubs, and 2 of them actually decided to self-fund. So in addition to the 7, 2 clubs basically said, I want to sponsor another school. And so there were a total of nine schools that benefited from this. And so those are the areas and the Rotary clubs that were involved. So a total of about 136 teachers were trained, and we got actually we trained two teachers per grade. So that's 14 plus the principal. So that's 15 per school. And so we expect that these 2 teachers per grade would then cascade it to the rest of the teachers. So for instance, in the 3 schools that my club worked with, basically, the 43 teachers had actually trained already another 100. No? So that's the multiplier effect. So this is a very busy slide, but just wanted you to have an idea of the kind of lesson plan that was included in that 3-day training. No, so it ranges from things like using new technology in teaching. They actually discussed the new curriculum of DepEd because at the same time DepEd also introduced a new kind of curriculum which is very much compressed. So the teachers had to also familiarize themselves with that. There was also a session on there were breakout groups, so they actually practice how to teach online, and then they also practice about how to use the multimedia materials from Knowledge Channel and incorporate that into the lesson plan. Obviously, as we can appreciate, no, I mean, a kid watching a video, it's much more interesting to him or to her rather than just reading from these books or listening to a teacher the whole time, no. So this is basically a sample of the curriculum, the 3-day curriculum. And in addition to the teacher training, part of the package also was the provision of a portable media library, or basically a hard drive, to each of the schools, which contained about 1,000 plus educational videos, which has been produced by Knowledge Channel since 1999. So these are educational games, educational lessons, educational games as well. And Knowledge Channel has the most comprehensive educational video library made for Filipino children. So where there are others that all have videos as well, it's only Knowledge Channel that has context, that has it for Filipino children. Not just in the subjects, but even in the values, no, and things like peace education, climate change, financial literacy, disaster preparedness, entrepreneurship, ALS, tech vox skills and things like that. So those are the kinds of videos that Knowledge Channel has produced, which form part of this hard drive, which was given to each of the schools. So basically, the teachers were very, very happy about it. We had more than 100 teachers, and they learned a lot. And there was also a session on working with collaborators, so working with the LGU, working with other schools as well, and working with organizations. So it was good practice for the teachers and the principal herself as well. So now I wanted to show you this little garden. It's a little pocket garden somewhere off EDSA. And it's actually a school for differently abled kids, no? And what happened here was that there were no green areas in this school. It's pretty much a cement thing with the garage and things like that, and in a dry garden. And and the problem was that the children, these are kids with special needs, they need to have a heightened sense of awareness when it comes to touch, smell, and feel. And therefore, having this kind of garden and herb patch basically helps them stimulate in their senses. No? And also, the kids would take care of the garden, and they gained a sense of responsibility and ownership. So what the club did basically was to build this patch of different kinds of vegetables and stuff, and the students now had the responsibility to take care of the plants, of course, with the assistance of the school staff. No? So how did this happen? Well, basically, it was all connections. No, basically they were able to get free seedlings from East West Seed because its GM was married to one of the members of the club. And then one of the club members had a child that studied in this school. So that's how the club found out about this school. No? And actually, prior to this, the club had already donated 50,000 to the school to help with the new building. So this is like the second intervention with that particular school. So at the end of the day, the partner organizations donated about 100,000 each. The club availed of a district grant. No, sorry, it was basically a PSP from the Rotary Club of Makati under their program PSP at that time. So they were able to access 100,000, and the club's only donation was 20,000 for this whole thing. What was interesting about this project is that all activities regarding the garden had to be directly connected to the regular or to the special ed curriculum. So, for instance, in a subject such as geography or a subject such as science, they would use having the garden there to explain certain concepts on science or chemistry. No? And it is very interesting to see the principal actually explain all these examples, no? And then also the kids would actually harvest the vegetables or the herbs, and then also and cook it themselves, and they had a cooking class. So that also provided them with some therapeutic intervention. And also, aside from the students learning about these things, it was also occupational therapy for them, no? It also helped the social interaction skills because some of these students here in this school have Down syndrome or autistic. So this really helped in terms of their occupational therapy. Now this is an interesting project by the Rotary Club of Paranaque Poblacion, which is a tutorial and values formation for young children that were struggling in school. No, so basically, the club is very close to the people in the parish, and so they work very. In fact, their RCC was actually from church goers. No, they're called San Dionisio Flores de Mayo. So the problem was that these are young children that came from economically challenged families and had very difficult time adjusting to a bigger school, quote unquote, like a nursery or something like that. So basically what happened is that the San Dionisio Flores de Mayo, which is the RCC of this club, they're all consisted of volunteers. They basically established a tutorial and values formation center for young children, for these young children who were struggling in school. And the center would be active on Sundays. So what was very interesting, because we actually went there. Now this is part of the projects that where we had an immersion. What is very interesting is how they involve the church, because to incent the mothers to bring their child there every Sunday for like 9 months or 10 months in a year. It's really quite challenging, that they have to go there every Sunday. So what they did is that they linked it to the mass. If the mass was 10 o'clock, they brought the kids in earlier than that, or they brought the kids in after that. No? So they made it part of their Sunday routine, no? Which I think was a great idea. And so the project was very successful. This lady here, the girl holding the mic, she was actually the tutor for all of these kids. And the scholars became much more confident about their public speaking and more diligent about studying. And also because the tutors were actually from their RCC, it also instilled in them the spirit of volunteerism and also gave hope to the scholars and their parents that their grades can improve if they just put in more time and effort. As I mentioned earlier, the key to success really here was the presence of the RCC, of which are basically teachers who monitored the improvement. They had, of course, the pre and post monitoring of these pupils to see how they improved over the months, no, and over the years. And as I mentioned earlier, it was part of the Sunday ritual. And of course, they had Jollibee every time. So I guess walang problema to go there basta lang may Jollibee. But every Sunday, they were there, no fail. Okay, now I wanted to cite this example. It's actually an example again of my club, no? But I just wanted to say two things here. That first is that it's important, every so many clubs I think gave tablets or laptops to the schools. But I think it's important to appreciate. I don't know how the things are in this area compared to Metro Manila, but the situation of the internet connectivity is very bad in Metro Manila. So although we gave them tablets, they also had a problem accessing the internet. No, so we had to give them load. And what's important also is that we didn't just stop there in giving the tablets. We also provided training in terms of how to use the tablets, but also training in terms of how to put in the parental controls. As you know, I don't know if you've heard, but the Philippines is in the map again. I think being in the top 10 in the world for sex trafficking online. No, and some of the victims are kids as young as 5 years old and 4 years old, no, being the victims of this sexual harassment and online sexual trafficking. So that's why it's important to have those kinds of controls in place. But the reason why I wanted to discuss this with you is really more because of the fundraisers. No, I think that we were able to do some innovative ways of fundraising, notwithstanding the pandemic, that I'd like to share with you. So here is a video. Here is a video that we released to potential sponsors, as well as our friends who, for the fundraisers that we had. No, so it's basically a call to action to help donate to buy tablets for the kids.
The pandemic has affected many: the elderly, the poor, those with vulnerable health issues, and our Filipino children. With distance learning as the new model of education, the digital divide has never been more apparent. 40% of low-income Filipino children cannot effectively learn because they do not have the proper gadgets, like tablets and smartphones, and even those that can have many challenges.
Sa pag-aaral ko po, nag-aaway po kami ng kapatid ko kasi po isang gadget lang po yung gamit namin.
Nakikiram lang po ako kay mama ko ng cellphone.
Yung isa po naming cellphone, gamit po ng ate ko. Tapos yung isa naman po gamit ko.
Parati po akong nawawala, tapos pagbabalik na po ako, tapos na po yung nililecture ni ma'am o ni sir. Kaya po di ko na po siya masyadong naiintindihan.
Titignan ko na lang po yung pag-aaralan namin sa module para po maintindihan ko.
Minsan maingay po mga kaklase. Di po makakonsentrate.
Hindi po namin alam kung paano po sasagutan yung module.
It doesn't have to be this way. We can save a generation by enabling our children to have tablets and smartphones to learn better. We are one with our children. By helping them, we can guarantee the future that we share. Since the pandemic started, the Rotary Club of Makati Premier District has donated over 200,000 PPEs and critical medical supplies to 80 hospitals. We have also given 30,000 face masks and face shields to essential workers. Thanks to your generosity, we will be helping 150 children have the proper distance learning gadgets to learn while they are at home. 50 teachers will also have new hard drives for lesson planning. How else can you help? Please donate so we can expand our program for more children in need. The pandemic has taught us that we are more connected than ever. We are one.
Okay, so you're probably asking, what was our game plan? For us to have been able to donate 200 tablets, that's a lot of money involved, no? So it was a very concerted effort of our club, headed by our public image director, to actually, first of all, this is our game plan. Number one was to create awareness of the challenges in education. So I mentioned to you about the education town hall that the district had organized. So what we did is that what the club did, on the other hand, was they wrote an article about that, because our PE, actually Rina, was actually a speaker at that district town hall. So that was like the first step. The second step was to establish credibility by showing how we solve these problems, how we help solve. No, so we posted information about the teacher training that we conducted, and the fact that we had already delivered a first batch of tablets. No, because our two fundraisers were actually in December of last year. And then to solicit public support to fund the tablets, we had very directed, social media posts, no, in Viber and WhatsApp, and we also paid for ads to widen the reach of this of these posts. No? After that, we also widened our reach further by tapping different communities for support. No? So for instance, given that our public image person was in LA based, she was very familiar with Eventbrite, which is basically a platform where anybody in the world can actually buy tickets. So even if these people could not watch the concert, although they could have, right? Because it's all online now. They actually could, it was so convenient for them to have paid and made a donation online. No? And also, we had continuous multiple posts to show what was the impact in terms of the beneficiary. So this is basically our public image campaign for these tablets. So the first fundraiser that we did was an online concert. You know, we had our singers were Jose Mari Chan, Joey Albert. We had two gentlemen, dapper gentlemen from our club, also joining the singing. And we also had the band called Route 70, which is basically a bunch of some friends of ours from school who have formed this professional band, no? And they're a dancing disco kind of band. So it was fun because we had the people that attended because of Jose Mari Chan and Joey, and there were also others that attended because of the band, no? So that was good. So I think the innovation here is that we were selling tickets at 1,000 pesos each, and we know that a tablet costs about 4,000 pesos, right? So one of our members, who is actually she's head of sales for a large insurance company. She said, "Why are we selling our tickets tingi-tingi? You know, why don't we incent people to buy more? You know." So what we did is that it was just a change of positioning, wherein we said, okay, if you donate or buy 4,000 worth of tickets, then you can actually give a tablet to a kid. So that was a very major shift in the way people reacted to it, no? Um, like I sent off the package to relatives and friends abroad, no, and right away they said, okay, they didn't say I'll buy 4 tickets. They said I'll buy 1 tablet, or I'll buy 2 tablets, or I'll buy 3 tablets. So that's how it. So in other words, rather than selling 1,000 each and looking for say 4 people, we were able to sell 1 tablet, worth the same amount to just one person. No? So it was a fantastic so-called promo or angle, and it allowed us to do very well in terms of our concert sales. So here you can just see all the sponsors that we got, as well as all the different social media posts that we made, just to create some noise and get people to be interested in watching the concert. And here, as I mentioned, we also enabled Eventbrite. I think you guys will remember that last year, at least Metro Manila was faced with many problems. The first problem was, of course, the Taal eruption, which happened in January, and then the pandemic hit. And then by November, there was also the flooding, Ulysses, and I forget the name of the other typhoon. So because of all that, a lot of the people actually in Manila were already had donor fatigue already, because they've been giving so much already with COVID, and then they gave to Taal, and then ngayon bagyo na naman. So it was a conscious decision on our part to actually tap as many people from abroad as possible. We all have family and friends abroad, right? So we were able to successfully tap them, no? So as mentioned here, no, we were able to sell tickets to 8 countries, our friends and family in 8 countries, and we promoted them to the Filipinos overseas, no. So because of that, we were able to address the issue of the donor fatigue by tapping these friends and family from abroad. So our second fundraiser was an online pop-up store for basically previously loved designer goods, no? And it actually went quite well. I mean, we had a few members who basically donated their stuff to be sold, and we made an arrangement with them. You can donate X% of the proceeds. If you want to donate 100% of the proceeds, all well and good, no? So we had that sort of arrangement. And then meanwhile, on the other hand, we also had to promote it to our friends to also visit the site and buy some stuff, no? So it was fun, but it was a lot of work. And I don't know why we had this crazy idea of doing both the pop-up store and doing the concert at the same time. We did them in the same month, no, in December, right? Just right before Christmas. So we were probably crazy to do that, no, but it actually went quite well, no, and we exceeded our targets. So with that, we were able to buy 200 plus tablets to give away. So that's good. And I wanted to share with you this videos from the kids who were, who received our tablets.
Maraming maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat po. Thank you po sa lahat.
Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat po.
Maraming maraming salamat po.
Okay, so now let's move on to the community and economic development projects. There's quite a few that I wanted to show you here. So the first is the caregiver program. It was actually funded by a global grant, but it's a very interesting concept, no? This is a project of the Rotary Club of Makati South. Bottom line is basically they tapped women from Tondo, places like Smoky Mountain. So one of the requirements was that you have to be a resident of Tondo, and you have to be a high school graduate, because to enter into the caregiver program, you have to be a high school graduate. And of course, a willingness to develop and upskills, no? And upskill. And their partners was the Rotary Club of Oberhausen in Germany, which is their partner in the global grant. And they also had a partner in terms of where the on-the-job training was and things like that, no? So the problem that the club wanted to address was to provide caregiver training to scholars from depressed areas and help them develop their competencies and their confidence, and of course, have a better life by having livelihood, no? And the program further envisions that productive and efficient graduates would have a brighter future ahead of them. So the whole program was geared towards these caregivers being able to obtain or pass with a test the national certificate 2, because that test the national certificate 2 is like a passport to a job, really, as a caregivers to hospitals and even private homes, no? So what the tuition involved was, it involved the whole package, involved a tuition at a school for them to take up the test, the 6-month course, the on the job training, the Red Cross training, and various allowances and things like that. And the club also arranged for the OJT in a hospital, which is owned by one of their actually a past president of their club. And of course, the Philippine National Red Cross for the basic life support training. So it's a rather expensive, program, in the sense that for each caregiver, you would have to spend 70,000 or so pesos. But then again, it was a 6-month course, and just imagine that, that 70,000 will go a long way in terms of turning around the life of these caregivers, no? So the total grant that they obtained was actually 138,000 for this particular grant, and I think it covered like 100 or so women over a span of 2 years. But the takeaway here is that if they had to tie up with an organization in Tondo to help source, of course, the eligible candidates, no, because it's good to obviously have people on the ground who know these women and could help in the selection process. And it also used members' vocation to provide, the requisite on the job training, etc. So out of the 120 that graduated in the last 2 years, at least when this thing was made, about 70 had already passed the test, the assessment, no, certificate, and are now working for private patients or health centers. They're actually now in round 2. So it's quite an interesting project that they're now tapping and looking for these beneficiaries to actually be part of this program. The second program that I wanted to show to you is the BPO online training program of the Rotary Club of Makati Century City. So the concept is the same, no? Basically, which is basically upskilling these people, no? And these were actually the beneficiaries. The beneficiaries were actually out of school youth, were unemployed, but they were sourced from two barangays in Pasig. There were about 30 candidates that were sort of like shortlisted, and nine were selected after an exhaustive, I think, two rounds of panels. No? So their partners were the two barangays in Pasig, and also a BPO company where two of their members were actually working. So what did the club do? They developed a 3-month program. Actually, it was a full-time online because this is already during the pandemic, no? So they developed a 3-month full-time online BPO training program. They actually hired a dedicated teacher. They had, as I mentioned earlier, two rounds of panels, and these two members who actually worked in the BPO also helped in terms of syllabus development. No? So this is all made in house. There was no test the package that they tapped for this one. No? And in addition to the 3-month program, oh, by the way, the 3-month program is X hours a day, and I forget how many hours a day, times 5 days for 3 months. So it was really like full time. And as needed, they also provided a laptop and load, no? So what was the training program? The training program was to help them become a call center agent, which meant they had to learn English. So they had to teach them even the intonation, how do you pronounce, and even grammar. They also taught them, of course, the IT tools, and they even taught them how to, communicate with different types of customers. Naman, di ba? This is a call center, so some customers are so makulit, and then some of them are also more patient. So they actually had tested them under these different scenarios. Their ability to adjust, their ability to appease a customer, etc. And they were also taught communication skills and telephone etiquette as part of this whole program. So I think that it was very rich in content, as you can see, and very very just right, the kind of training that these ladies and men needed in order to get a better job. So the takeaway here is that the two Pasig barangays were really instrumental in helping them source the candidates. Because imagine they had to be high school graduates, they had to be unemployed, and speak English, no? And they basically, the barangays used their Facebook pages to reach out to potential candidates. They also had very strict screening and attendance. So if you were absent twice, then they're out of the program. So the 9 students who graduated from the program, they're actually, one of them was an out-of-school youth. One of them worked in food service, so siguro fast food yan. One of them or two of them was a OFW. The others were sari-sari store owners that became displaced from the pandemic, and other unemployed individuals. So now, as of last week, when I spoke to the proponent of this project in the club, she said that out of the 9, 2 have already been hired, through their contacts, no, and they are now actually embarking on batch 2, and I have already shortlisted 11 out of the 20, coming from Pasig and Pateros. So that's them on graduation. So imagine they're unemployed and they're here. They are in their black skirts and white blouses. They all look so good. So this is one of the projects that was brought to us, and we were able to extend 4 district grants to 4 clubs for this. No, so this is a very interesting project which is brought to us by this group. So the Philippine Business for Social Progress, of course, everybody knows PBSP. It's the largest business non-profit organization in the Philippines, and they had partners. The one on the left is called SNPP. This is an organization of 72,000 beneficiaries of the 4 Ps. Remember that PPP of the cash transfer system of the government. So there's 72,000 beneficiaries around the country, and they organize themselves into the group called SNPP. So these are the leaders of that group, no, and they work very, very hard. And yeah, let me just show you this other slide. So before we go there, so the project is basically Puhunang Pamayanan, which is a community-based livelihood revolving fund. Okay. So, but first, I just wanted to, the one that brought the deal to us or the transaction to us was a group called Collab. Well, actually, the Collab is just a number for them. But as you can see here, we have, if some of you recognize Dinky Soliman, she's a former DSWD secretary. So she was one of the conveners of this Collab group. The other one is Ray Laguda, who is the chairman of PBSP, chairman or president of PBSP. And then we had all of these other organizations. In fact, this is the same group that was the convener of the Bayanihan Musikahan, which I'm sure you've heard about, right? All throughout the pandemic, the Bayanihan Musikahan project, they were just the ones serenading us every night or every week, right? We had Lea Salonga, Gar Valenciano, we had Martin, and all these artists. They're all through Bayanihan Musikahan. And these people here were one of the conveners. So Bayanihan Musikahan was able to raise 120 million, imagine, from all their daily or weekly song fest. No? So anyway, it was this group that thought of like, what, okay, we've done relief, we've raised money to Bayanihan Musikahan. They used ABS-CBN and this SNPP group to basically distribute all these goods, from the funds that they raised. But they were looking at something that was more sustainable and long term, which is why they thought of this revolving credit fund involving mobile talipapas. No? So what's the project? Basically, it's quite simple. No, I mean they provide capital, or we provided the capital of about 3,000 pesos per person, and in a few weeks' time, I think it's 3 weeks' time, they would have had enough to actually pay back that entire loan. No? So this is how it goes. So there were 3 pilot areas in Makati, Muntinlupa, and Parañaque, no? And 12 or so borrowers per location, no? And so the way it works is that they are provided each 3,000 pesos as a loan amount. And the borrowers were actually, these are people that already know how to make negosyo. These are people that had puhunan, meaning to say they had their goods. I mean, they had their, what do you call that, their motorcycle or whatever the mobile talipapa is. That was their sweat. That was their capital. So the only problem was that because of the pandemic, nawala yung capital nila. But they've been doing this kind of business already with this talipapa already for a long time, for years and things like that. So they already had that expertise. We didn't need to teach them anymore. What they just needed was the money to just jumpstart and start all over again. No? So that's what we did basically. And so the expectation was that it would be like 12 borrowers per location. So that's 36 borrowers. And that after 3 months, when they pay back, no, sorry, it's actually 3 weeks. They can pay back the 3,000 in 3 weeks. And then they lend na naman to somebody else. So it just goes on and on and on. It's a revolving credit fund, but it's different people that are borrowing at different times. No? At the end of 3 months, we expect that there will be 144 borrowers from the initial 36. So this is just a graphical description of how the money goes around. No? So when this group approached us, the PBSP and this group, they had already done the needs assessment. They had already done the market scanning. And the good thing is that the SNPPs are actually on the ground. So us, I mean, Rotary, we did not have to brave and go out into the, COVID infested areas because the SNPPs were there. Mismo, this is their, that's their, what do you call that? That's their residence. They live there, so they knew, they knew their neighbors and everything. So they did all of this preparatory stage. All of this work was done by PBSP, by their other partners before they even brought the transaction to us. And right now we are in the process of several rounds of the borrowings already, and there are a bit of a few hitches there, but we were able to correct. And actually, when they presented to us, everybody was actually saying, why do you make them pay us back in 3 weeks? Why not 4 weeks or even 5 weeks? Give them a little bit of time. It seems too soon to just do it after 3 weeks, but they have their own reasons for that. But anyway, right now there are some recalibrations that are being done in order to address that particular concern. So these are our partners, no? So as SNPP, as I mentioned, is this group of 72,000 members. So they were the main implementer. At the same time, they were the beneficiary of the project. PBSP provided basically the capacity building exercise. They did the budgeting. They taught them how to do their books, no? How to do their books. And then ANSA, this other foundation, they're actually also on the ground. So they're the one that helps also in terms of capacity building, organizing them into co-ops, organizing them into groups, and having their own so-called bylaws and things like that. So it is a very good partnership among SNPP, Rotary, PBSP, and ANSA. So that's it. And then now, this is another livelihood project, which is a Banca project, another funded by Global Grant by Makati EDSA. And they actually did it in two areas. The first was in Tagum, Davao. Um, and the other one was, that was really more for livelihood, was the other project that they did in Bantayan Island, Cebu, was basically more a reaction to Typhoon Haiyan, no, wherein these coastal dwellers basically lost all their boats, no. So what was given was, the project is actually similar, except that the purpose is different in that sense, because one was really for livelihood, whereas the other one was more in the form of relief, no. So what did the global grants basically funded the construction of the motorized bancas for fishing and the supply of related items such as fishing nets. So in the case of the settlers in Tagum, they actually were fishing, but they were just nang miminwit, no? They didn't really have a boat. So this is really the first time that they had a boat, no? And at that time, and so what did the club do? Basically, the income of the fishermen used to be just 100 pesos a day. But after this project, they were actually earning already as much even as 1,500 a day. And then the club also, with their local partners, also organized a co-op to make sure that things went on smoothly. So this was funded by two global grants. One was for Bantayan, Cebu. The other one is for Tagum in Davao. So roughly 60 to 70,000. So what you see in the picture is, I believe this is Bantayan. Yeah, the red one is the Bantayan, the red boats. So what are the takeaways here? One is that they provided the large community nets, which would force these fishermen to fish as a community, and not like, oh, ito yung sa akin, ito yung sa'yo, ganyan, no? So it has basically forced them to fish as a group, no? And the boats were not given to the fishermen directly, but to a local organization, because we wanted to make sure na, the fisherman doesn't use the fish for, the boat for whatever other purposes, no? So that's why, and plus there were strict rules. So if one was kicked out of the program, we needed the organization to find another fisherman to come in, no? So they basically hired a training and implementation partner that was instrumental in doing all the community mapping, the organizational development, taught them how to run a business, and then formed an association. And the fishermen were also given some sweat equity because they had to assemble the boats, no? So that was their contribution. So the boats arrived there disassembled, and so they had to assemble them, no? There were also strict rules like no dynamite fishing. If you join the boat, if you joined a bigger fishing crew, or if you sold the boat, then you're out of the system. You're out of the program. So this program was very successful in moving the fishermen out of their old legacy arrangements with middlemen. So these middlemen actually owned the boat, which was leased by the fishermen. And in exchange for them leasing it, they would buy all the produce, all the fish from the fishermen, but at set prices. So now, since they had their own boats now, they got out of all those arrangements, which I'm sure was not very was disadvantageous to them. And of course, in things like this involving mga barangays and things like that, it gets sometimes gets to be very, very political. And in this case, the mayor actually had to step in. There was also forced savings wherein money was set aside for the maintenance of the boats because actually the motors could actually last longer than the boat itself. So if the boat got old or had to be maintained, then they could actually get rid of that and just get new ones and still use the old motor. No, it would still work. So this is how it was in Bantayan. These are the boats, and then these are the training and the turnover here in the picture on the left. And then here with the green boats, these are the ones. This is the ones in Tagum, in Davao. So this is also a very interesting project which just came to my attention recently. So it's also a global grant of the Rotary Club of Makati East. This the beneficiaries of this project were reformed drug users who were now about to go back to society. So they were already reformed, they were ready to go back into the society, but the need was identified to be able to give them a livelihood so that they don't go back to their bad habits, and also to get them to restart their lives, no, after having been in rehab. So basically, the beneficiaries of this project was the 140 drug users from Tanawan, Leyte, who were now coming back to society, and about 1,000 town folks in the area. Because in addition to the reformed drug users, the town folks also benefited because at that time, I'm not sure where Tanawan Leyte is, but they were sourcing their eggs as far as Bantayan Island, which is 8 hours and 3 islands away, and they're paying, so much, like I think 9 pesos per egg or something like that. So what the club did is that they partnered with Pilmico. I'm sure you must have heard of Pilmico. It's the um, feeds part of the business of Aboitiz Group, and they actually provided the training and the supply of the egg layers and the cages and the feeds, no. And Pilmico actually had the experience of doing this because during another previous typhoon, they actually did the same thing already. So they really had the know-how, they knew what to do. No? So it was quite uncanny the way that the club was able to identify and team up with Pilmico. No? And of course, Pilmico also provides the feeds, no, for the chicken. And also the municipality LGU, it's quite interesting, but they had a very strong community development department that was actually instrumental in training these reformed drug users in terms of how to run the business and things like that. So I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. So what did the club do? Basically, they provided training. They had like a barn type thing to house the cages, the water. They had feeding and light, and 1,440 chickens. And they were given like puhunan of 1 month's worth of feeds and vitamins just to get them started. So the takeaway here is that, as I mentioned, Pilmico did something similar before after Yolanda, so they had that experience, so that counted a lot. The LGU had a very strong community development department, and they assigned the project manager, and they taught the beneficiaries how to run the business. So Pilmico taught them about the technical stuff about chickens, whereas the LGU taught these people how to basically the running of the business part. No? So when I asked the person involved in in their club about this project, his one of his main takeaways, which is quite interesting, was that is the need for transparency to the beneficiaries of the financials and things like that, so that you can gain their trust. They knew what they were getting and what they were not getting. And that also actually overcame the inherent mistrust, that people in the provinces have for people from the cities, no? Or let's say the people in the government, for instance, like that. So that was very important. And of course, the important thing is connections because it's all the way in Leyte. So as it turns out, the proponent of this project, his father used to be the mayor of that town. So because of that, they were able to deal well with the succeeding mayor and things like that. No. Um, well, one of his realizations, interestingly, when he was preparing the global grant application, is that he was thinking about what can I give, you know, and he realized that it should actually be what do they need first and what can I do and give. I mean, it's just basic community needs assessment, right? But there's a very strong tendency really for all of us to say, okay, this is what I can give now before really asking what they want. No. But anyway, he realized that in the course of doing the global grant application. And then can you imagine the monthly revenue of these reformed drug users? Umabot siya ng more than 200,000 per month they were earning, no? And then their margin was about 40%. And that's even in addition, that's even, hindi pa counted dun yung capex that they had to set aside, no? So the 40% is what they actually earn, no? And the club had to contribute to the global grant, and the club found a way for them to split the cost of the 5,000, but at the same time do it in such a way that would benefit certain members who were gonna commit to donate the following year again as a Paul Harris Fellow. So I think that was an interesting X deal that they worked out there. So this is how it looked, the parang barn, and that's where the chickens are. And this is the picture of the actual place, the training of Pilmico, and then the egg collection on the right. So now, we're almost done. So now we move to water, sanitation, and hygiene. Okay, so let's start off first with this video.
Rotary knows that providing access to clean water around the world is about more than digging wells. That's why Rotary brings together community leaders, governments, and agencies to plan policies and funding that ensure permanent access to water. Be part of the solution. Learn more.
Most of us take access to clean water and sanitation for granted, but there is a scarcity of clean, safe drinking water and sanitation facilities all over the world. 1 out of 10 people lack access to safe water. 1 out of 3 people lack access to a toilet. 1/3 of the world's schools lack access to safe water and adequate sanitation. In the Philippines alone, over 26 million people do not have access to sanitary toilets, and only 5% of Filipino households have access to a sewer system. And high connection costs render many households unable to connect to water systems, forcing them to use unsafe or unreliable water sources. Unsafe water leads to the spread of disease. It compromises the health and safety of entire communities. It robs the youth of the opportunity to gain education. It robs families of livelihood and economic opportunities. This is why we care. Because we know that there are simple and cost-effective solutions to the water crisis. And we know that you are in the best position to bring about those solutions. Rotary International has taken the initiative to help those in need. That is why we have set up the WASH, Water, Sanitation, Hygiene Project. We are committed to solving the water crisis, and we help provide education and economic opportunities to those affected. Organizations around the world are helping, but it is not enough. We need your help. The world is counting on you. Help us change the future.
Okay, so this is the first water project here. This is a recently completed project, which was in Tagabinet in It's actually, yeah, in the island of Palawan, on the opposite side of Puerto Princesa, based on this map. So what's the problem? The problem, I don't know if you're aware, but Palawan is so spread out, no? And some of the schools, it's very hard to get to. And Tagapinet is one of them. It's a very far-flung barangay in Puerto Princesa. It has 7 puroks and about 3,000 residents, about half of which were indigenous peoples or IPs. And they also had 2 schools, one high school and one elementary school. And half of the dorm actually were comprised of IP students. So the problem was that down there at the where the sitio was, the lands were actually parched and they had no access to water. But the mountains had a very clear water source. But they also had to realize that water is sacred to the IPs. So the question is, how do you now tap that water? And how do you satisfy the IPs? So the project involved tapping mountains, the mountain spring water all the way up from the mountains down to the town, down to a water collection area, and continuing on to the linking also the residences. No, it also included training and capacity building to form a co-op. So this was funded by a 72,000 global grant, which was obtained in connection with the Korean club. So this is what they did. So here on the left, you can see these huge, humongous pipes, which went all the way down, about 3 kilometers down, all the way down to the bayan. And also, this is the installation of water lines from the water source down to the main supply tank, no? And 40 households. So the picture in the middle is when the first gush of water came from the mountain, no? So can you imagine the relief to the town to have that kind of access to water finally after all these years, no? And so the one in the red, that's actually their collection tank for water as well. So based on this, so the schools also now have toilets, and even now the households, they finally they finally had water. Something that we take for granted, obviously, here in Luzon. Oh, there's a duplicate slide here. Okay. So one of the takeaways is that how to address the beliefs of the IPs and the rural folks about water. And there was really a need to get to know them first and to appreciate where they were coming from, to be able to find a solution to their concern. The other takeaway or challenge was that there was a lot of mistrust among the NGOs and other governmental agencies that were involved, because obviously in the past the promises have been unfulfilled, no? Also, the non-IPs that own the land, which from the mountain down, were also worried that their land might just be, expropriated and they will not get paid anything. No? So at the start, they were even charging toll just for the people piping to go down. No, they were charging them toll. The other challenge was that they had a divided partisan community, and they were very, very, very mistrustful. But the end of the project, the community came together because the water was already there. So everybody was happy. They saw that things could be done, that things were done, as planned. And so that brought the community together, and they established a water management association, which would take care of the repair of the facilities. Some of the IP students have actually gone back to formal education. So before, the IPs would be studying, up in the mountains, but now they're back down in the just taking regular classes in school, no? So there was a lot of I guess ancillary projects like supporting also the ALS community there. And also the education component was actually very challenging but mostly rewarding. And at the end, it was just very, I guess, touching to see how the community came together even after the handover. And they realized that, Rotarians are actually do good in the world. And that's really the best public image that one could have on this project. One of the takeaways is that a more thorough community needs assessment needs to be done to include also things like the communities and personal beliefs. No, that's not kasi in our form. That's not in our form, our standard Rotary form of community needs assessment. So it was left out earlier. But then they dealt with it. They realized their problem and they dealt with it. No. And obviously, one of the takeaways is the need for constant and open communication with the stakeholders and be very, very patient and have a steadfast dedication. The proponent, which is CP Rose Acoba, was making kwento that you're almost going to give up last year actually because it was getting very, very tense. There's so much mistrust talaga. It's actually quite sad, but that was the situation. But they were able to address things. So this is the final handover. That's the big, huge, humongous collecting tank, no, for this water system. So this is a little video of them being interviewed by, I think, ANC or ABS-CBN Patrol.
Handog po ngayon ng isang grupo ang water system project sa dalawang purok dito po sa Barangay Tagabinet. Nagpapatrol sa dayan na lahat at mga sir, mga ma'am. Approve yan.
Isa sa mga rural barangay ng Puerto Princesa ang Barangay Tagabinet. At isa sa kanilang problema ay ang kawalan ng tuloy-tuloy na malinis na tubig. Kaya naman sa tulong ng non-government organization na Rotary Club of Makati Olympia at mga kapartner nitong Rotary Club of Korean District 3620 ay naisipan nilang magtayo ng water system sa lugar upang maibsan ang problema sa tubig.
Kasi napaka-rich nung natural resources doon. Merong mga bukal na talagang kumbaga virgin na mga bukal sa bundok. Pero bakit yung mga schools na dalawa, yung Tagabinet Elementary and High School, walang tubig? Yung community itself, paminsan-minsan lang nagkakatubig, pero pagka tag-init talagang totally wala silang water.
Katulad ng mga waterborne diseases na binibigay ng maruming tubig, ang diarrhea, siyempre pati rin yung H fever kasama dyan.
Dalawang purok ang masusuplayan ng water system, ang purok Pagkakaisa at purok Maligaya. May tubig na rin na magagamit ang mga estudyante at guro sa high school at elementary school ng barangay. Dadaan sa multiple filtration system ang tubig na galing sa isang bukal sa purok Pagkakaisa. Pero para sa grupo, hindi sapat ang proyektong patubig. Dapat maituro rin ang tamang kalinisan sa mga residente upang maiwasan ang mga sakit.
Kailangan i-integrate po namin yung education tungkol po dun sa proper hand washing, ano yung mga diseases na kasama pag hindi malinis ang tubig na iniinom o ginagamit, yun po ang kasama. Kaya bukod po dun sa water system, actually po meron din wash area na pwedeng magamit yung mga estudyante sa schools. And mga toilet din.
Patuloy naman ang gagawing pagmomonitor ng grupo sa kanilang proyekto at pag-check ng kalidad ng tubig na mapoproduce nito. Sa ganitong paraan, umaasa silang maiiwasan na ang mga sakit sa lugar dahil sa bagong kaalaman sa kalinisan at water system na kanilang handog. Diana Lat, ABS-CBN News.
Okay, so now this is another project of Makati Olympia. I mean, this is two projects by Olympia because Olympia is known as the water club. I mean, perhaps my club might be known maybe as an education club. Olympia is actually the water club. They've done so many all water projects. No? So this one is a project that they did. It's similar, in Batad, Iloilo, but the difference is that it served a group of people who were relocated there after the typhoon. After Yolanda, it basically washed out the community, and that community was moved to a settlement area in Batad. They also, the project also involves some capacity building and cost about 45,000 global grant. So in contrast to the people in Palawan, These people in Iloilo, I guess because they're Ilonggo, they're very welcoming, they're very easy to talk to, they're very compliant. And actually, 7 members of the club actually came from Iloilo and actually live in Iloilo. So that helped in terms of the setting up. They had a very good relationship with the people there. They even incorporated a livelihood project because, as you know, the normal problem for relocation site is that when you move all of them, the next problem is anong trabaho nila doon, di ba? What do they do there? So they even had a sewing machine project for that. And then they also set up a water system cooperative wherein they would get free water after the first 2 years. So they're now entering they're completing the first 2 years. So now they will start charging already now for water. And that 2 years gave also the organization time to settle down and to get trained really in how to run the business, etc. So that was a good break for them. So if we tell you what's good to do, I mean, these projects are all outstanding projects. We also need to tell you what not to do. So in this particular case, I guess a couple of years ago, we did what they call a 100 by 100, meaning 100 clubs to provide 100 toilets. So it sounds great, right? It sounds great as an idea, but in actual application, it really didn't work out well. Because having the 100 toilets meant there were 100 schools. So some schools, I mean, what is one toilet if they need 5 toilets or something, so it was basically too spread out, and they had to do so much needs assessment, the different clubs, I mean, can you imagine 100 Rotary clubs doing the same needs assessment, but just, in different area. Also, the ratio of the DepEd of I guess student to toilet was not also met. So at the end of the day, it's better to do a few schools, but more toilets for them. That is more impactful than doing 100 schools with 1 toilet each and having all of these problems. So I'd like to share with you this last video of how water problems came about in Haiti and how they resolved them. So here it is.
He actually spent the first 15 years bringing wells and hand pumps to communities around Haiti. But over those 15 years, we constantly struggled to keep the wells operational. The best practices at the time were about community engagement. If they didn't organize themselves, then we would come drill a well and they would be responsible for managing it. And we had all different solutions. We had paid a guy to go around and fix the wells, set people up in business and train them, and we still struggled keeping the wells operational. In 2004, I decided I wanted to know how big a problem it was. So I sent a guy out on a motorcycle with a GPS unit and a little survey form, and he visited close to 1,000 wells. And when we looked at the data, it showed us that only half of the wells were working. Basically, 50% of everything I'd done in 15 years was lost. It sounds hard, but I've since discovered that that's the same success rate that everyone in the world has. And so we changed our game to be one of training the communities to essentially create a business plan. They collect around 50 US cents per household per month. To date, they have something like 85,000 US dollars in savings towards the repair of their wells. That's been a fantastic thing. Overnight, like one well to the next. Now the success rate jumped to 90% of the wells working. After about 10 years having that kind of success rate, we asked, how would we know when everyone had access to water and sanitation? So we went out and created a map. We mapped every house in Haiti, every well, every spring, every water system, and have that available online. So not only do we have a crazy high success rate with the wells being operational, but we use this to plan and build a system bringing water and sanitation to everyone. That's the kind of ownership and powerful tools that we can bring to the game. If there's any organization that can do it, I think Rotary is the one.
Okay, that's the end. So I'll also have, if you have any questions, please feel free.